Hey everybody, and welcome to my studio. As a maker and designer, marking my work is super important to me. It is basically the most important kind of branding because it's your logo directly connected to your work. Still, I think it's very hard to settle on one specific kind of mark because different objects ask for different brandings. So this video is a compilation of my favorite kind of brandings. It's mostly unusual techniques I discovered along the way and also little tricks I picked up to get a cool branding on different materials without spending a lot of money. Here we go. This video is awesome if you want to go for a branding look on paper, cardboard or wood. The video is a little bit older. I am still in my old shop.
Hi, I'm Laura. Welcome to my shop.
And I also look like a baby, but I think the technique is awesome and I've gotten some great results and also great feedback from you guys over the years. So check this out.
There are only two things you need for this technique. The first thing is ammonium chloride. You can get that in a pharmacy for super cheap. And the second thing is a hot air gun. And then you just take 1 tablespoon of ammonium chloride, mix it with 100 milliliters of water, and you're basically good to go. The way this works is when you apply the mix to wood and then hit it with the hot air, the ammonium reacts and chemically burns the wood. Depending on how long you apply the heat, the burn will be more or less intense. That gives you a lot of control over the look of your branding. There are a lot of ways to apply it. Here's just a few. So you could use an empty stamp pad, fill it up with the mix, and use a regular stamp for your branding. Or you could fill an empty marker with the mix and use your handwriting. You could also use a regular stencil. And I also had great results using a vinyl sticker, covering that with varnish, then getting rid of the vinyl sticker and then applying the solution.
The great advantage of this technique is that you are super flexible in size and design of the branding that you want to do. And it's also very, very cheap and super simple to do at home. This is definitely a trick you should keep in your back pocket. The next video is great for when you want to screen print something, but you don't have the photosensitive emulsion. In the full video, which is linked in the description, I also show you how to build the whole screen from scratch. But for now, let's jump right into the action.
First of all, you need a vinyl sticker of the design that you want to print. I used my little silhouette cutter to cut out my logo. Just place the sticker to the underside of your screen and carefully remove the backing paper. Sometimes that takes a little patience, but once it's done, you should be good to go. And now here's the trick. Instead of using the photosensitive emulsion, you simply use regular wood glue. Fill up your scoop coater with a bunch of wood glue and then carefully run it over the underside of your screen, covering as much of the screen as you can and also covering your vinyl. And then you simply let the glue dry. And once everything is dry, you can come back and peel off your stencil. Just be careful not to puncture your screen. This screen came out really, really nice. It's all a matter of how thin your glue coat is, and that's why the scoop coater is a big help. It just helps you to spread the glue as thin as possible. And the rest of the process is just the same. You prepare your fabric, you prepare your screen, you pick the color, you fill up the screen with your paint, and then you run over it with a squeegee. Although this technique is not as perfect as regular screen printing, I have a tendency to use this one because the photosensitive emulsion has a short shelf life and it is pretty expensive. So whenever I need to screen print something, it's usually not more than, let's say, 10 prints. And for that amount of prints, the wood glue works perfectly. It is much cheaper, it is easier to store, and it's also a little bit more fun, I think. And of course, keep in mind that screen printing is not only good for fabric, you can print on pretty much anything. So you can also use way smaller prints and print it on wood or steel or paper or cardboard or leather or whatever you can think of. Any flat surface will be good for screen printing.
The third video is great for when you actually want to have a branding iron, but you don't want to spend the money on an expensive new one and rather want to make one yourself. This week's idea is either very, very dumb or it is genius. I came across these old irons. I think this one particular is a travel iron, which is odd because it weighs at least 3 kilos. The funny thing is, because they are so old, they almost have no safety measures. There isn't even a ground on this thing, and they get crazy hot. They just keep getting hotter and hotter if you turn them on. So I thought, do they actually get so hot that you could burn wood with them? Let's find out.
I used a piece of brass and hand carved my design into it. Remember to mirror the image before you do all the work. And yeah, I really speak from experience. I did it wrong and then I ended up burning a mirrored image. If you have a CNC machine, this process is even easier. You can simply cut it there. To attach the plate to the iron, I simply transferred the holes of my brass plate to the iron and then carefully drilled into them, making sure not to hurt the electronics. And then I could come back and tap these 2 holes. That doesn't only allow a secure connection, it also allows me to attach different plates and interchange the designs. Heat up your iron for a good 15 minutes and then you should be good to go. The best thing about this technique is that it works on so many different materials. I tried plywood, leather, pine wood, cardboard, paper. It all works great and it looks awesome.
This is a perfect recycling project. It works great and it also gives you the opportunity to have interchangeable designs. Just watch out these old things, like don't let them overheat, and also be careful with the electronics. And the last method looks a little bit complicated, but it's actually a lot easier than it appears, and it is perfect when you want to leave your mark on steel.
I didn't want to cook up this solution in my kitchen because at the end of the day it is acid that you're working with. So I took a little camping stove to my workshop and made the solution there. And I started by boiling up a pot of water and heated up everything inside that pot of water just to prevent things from overcooking. And then I started with 100 milliliters of distilled water, let it warm up, and then added 10 grams of copper oxide. And once everything is dissolved, I added the 20 milliliters of formic acid. Make sure you wear glasses and gloves. This is very, very aggressive acid. And then just let it warm up until it gets this really cool blue color. And then you're basically done. Make sure your steel is nice and clean. I sanded it and then came back with some degreaser just to make sure that it's really, really clean. And then you can simply brush it on. And as you can see, it reacts instantly. It's very, very cool. Once your steel has the color that you're looking for, wipe off the solution with a cloth and then come back with some oil to protect the copper layer. Otherwise, this beautiful copper layer will turn into a layer of rust. So you need to neutralize the solution. You could also use baking soda or window cleaner for that. But now let's use this technique to actually mark a piece of steel. I cut out my design on my vinyl cutter and then just used it as a stencil and applied the solution. And as you can see, this works perfectly. This is the only technique I have tried so far, but I can imagine that there are different ways you can use this solution to mark your work, maybe with stamps or fill up an empty marker and use your handwriting. If you try something like this, please let me know in the comments. I would love to know.
There are, of course, a bunch of different ways that you can mark your work. Those 4 techniques were just 4 of my favorite, most unconventional examples how you can mark your work for relatively cheap, and especially you can do it at home without fancy equipment. To mark the little machines that I like to make, I use these aluminum tags. I especially like that they have this slot for a serial number or for the year that the machine was built. And for my merch, I always use these screen printed loop labels, and they will get sewn on to the sweater or the shirt. I think that's a pretty cool solution. But if you are just starting out and you don't want to settle on any of these techniques, the first thing I would advise you to get is a bunch of stickers. Slap them everywhere, give them away to friends, put them on your work. Just, mark your work and be proud of the things that you built. So those are my branding and marking advices for this week. Maybe I will come up with new techniques over the years, but so far this is a pretty good portfolio of branding solutions for your work. Now, before I go, I want to take a second and thank my sponsors for making all of this possible. Please take a second and check out the links in the description to see all the wonderful companies, people and friends that I get to work with. And of course, as always, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next week with a new video. Bye.